evening, everyone. It's Cheryl, and welcome to the Business of Property. I have to excuse the screaming in the back because we have a little girl who is not adjusting to this daylight savings in Sydney very well. So we're having dramas, putting little people to sleep. So those with little people, you understand what I'm going through. My husband's got it all under control. I hope he does. Tony, come on. Hello. Hi, Chris. How are you doing? Hope your kids are going to bed okay. Mine haven't been adjusting very well the last few days. Hi, Tony. I need to put my headphones on. That's what I need to do. That's what's happening there.
Put your headphones in. Put your headphones in.
That's it. I hope they're noise cancelling because I have screaming child in the background. I won't.
So noise cancelling for children, are they?
Yes.
You could be onto something.
Yeah. I'm trying to do that to the office as well. Well, generally, just most of the house. Just have a room just for the children. Is your hair getting shorter? Is that for me or is that for you, Tony?
Is it for me?
Yeah.
Is it for me? Yeah. No, my hair's getting longer actually. So.
No, I'm actually tempted, Chris, to shave it off because it's at the point. That's the thing with short hair is that you need to maintain it more. I can't just put it in a ponytail.
You do.
Goro, how are you doing? Welcome. How are you feeling, Tony?
I'm still about 85%, so I'm not 100%, so I'm going to apologise up front. I just finished a coaching call about half an hour ago and I was barking and coughing and spluttering and carrying on, so working my way through it. Yeah, so that's okay. I'm up. Mentally I feel good, but still got a bit of a cough and a bit of a runny nose. That's okay.
It's the Ebola.
Could be. Could be.
The man flu. It's developed to Ebola. Well. Ebola, that's right. But you were an absolute trooper because you went to Melbourne and pretty much.
Oh well, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I shouldn't have in hindsight. Yeah, that's right. So yes, thank you. Sorry, carry on.
It was a property developer network. Was it just a meetup or was it a sort of a weekend event?
No, it was a meet-up, so just the day. So I started my day at 4 a.m. on Saturday morning,
goodness.
and I walked in my door at about 12:15 on Sunday morning. So it was a full-on day. Wow. So I got the first flight down, last flight home, and then by the time I had to do all my bits and pieces and got home, then it was about 12:15. So it was a huge day, yes. And not the best way to be spending your time if you're not 100%, but. Nonetheless, it was a commitment that I gave to Rob a little while ago because Rob's daughter turned 18. Yes. And so Rob was doing the responsible thing and being there, looking after all the kids and making sure they behave themselves. Excuse me.
He was actually joining in. He was actually joining in the party. Yeah, Rob's a bit of a party animal from what I hear.
Actually, I spoke to him, and so his role was around cooking the snags, and then he was quietly stuck in his room, so he was behaving himself.
Right, probably tuning in and doing property things, finding out what's happening with interest rates and property development, which is what a wonderful way to spend your Saturday night, right? The topic for the day. So feel free to cough away. Don't hold it in. It's all better to come out. I did post out a little bit of a Q&A sort of post this afternoon, and I had missed one. I apologize. It was about land tax, but before I posted up what today's topic was about, and obviously. The topic of sort of choice at the moment and going around what everyone's thinking about is what the effect of interest rates are going to have in the property market. Are we seeing sort of a bit of a rumbling of optimism picking up in the major cities? Sydney, Melbourne. I have to admit I'm not entirely sure what's happening in Brisbane. So that would be Queensland would be interesting to hear. From your aspect, because you've got a site and a few sites that are looking for buyers, and whether.
Well, I think that let's just distinguish between my sites and the rest of Queensland, right? So,
I thought.
please don't determine what's happening in the general market or what's happening on my
No,
sites.
no,
My
no,
goodness.
no, no. But that, I mean, it is. I mean, we are talking about Queensland in general, and of course,
Yeah, sure.
do your sites not epitomise what's happening in Queensland in general, Tony?
No, they don't. No, they don't. Unfortunately, no. So that's okay. It's all part of the journey of being a property developer,
That's
right?
exactly
So
it.
just for those who are tuning in, wondering what the hell is this bloke talking about? So I've got 5 things that I'm trying to sell at the moment. I've been trying to sell them for a while, and before you get on there and say, well, hey, you could significantly reduce the price. Yeah, sure, I could, but I'm being a little bit flexible on my price, but I don't want to go too silly with it because I've also got subsequent stages in my both my developments. So it's all about, if this was the end of my development, then perhaps I may have a different viewpoint. But because I've got subsequent stages, if I go and reduce my price too much, then it resets the benchmark for future stages. So I'm playing the tightrope or the balancing act. Between wanting to offload some stuff, but also not wanting to go and stuff myself up into the future. But anyway, so yes, that's my sites. But look, I think generally. The general bits that I'm reading and that I'm hearing about is that, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, there seems to be a little bit of a bounce back, a little bit of positivity returning back into the market. Obviously, having lower interest rates is incredibly helpful for that. I think the question, which none of us have the crystal ball, is this a resurgence on a more semi-permanent basis, or is it a short-term blip? Which then could recorrect itself in the not too distant future. I suppose the thing is that this is typically the time of year when properties exchange hands, right? So when you get into that spring, September, October into November, it's generally the selling seasons, the selling months. So you would expect things to be more positive, and obviously having a rate reduction there a couple of, or last week it was actually, having the rate reduction. That helps increase the positivity, but it's more the question for me is this going to be a prolonged improvement, or is it going to be short-lived? And to be honest, I don't have the answer.
Yeah. I don't think any of us do, but I mean, there's no denying that the media has a huge amount of influence on how the general public sort of views what's happening in the property space. Obviously, having interest rates, if you're a homeowner. Or your investor as well, hopefully your lender has also dropped their rates in accordance with the rate drop. We were very lucky that our lender implemented it instantly, pretty much as soon as it was announced. And I know some of the larger lenders took a little while, but I think they've pretty much all carried through. If there's anyone that's got a lender there that hasn't, put your hands up. It'll be interesting to see who is actually realizing the benefits of this interest rate drop. And there's the flip side, right? There's hopefully that's going to be instigating a bit more activity in the space. We've got the lending requirements and policies have loosened up a bit. We've got lower interest rates. It generally would assume that it would lead on to more activity in the market, and if it's the timing as well, you're talking about spring. So I think we are seeing a lot better clearance rates in the major cities, which is fantastic. So it comes down then to how it's going to flow on from a development side. Is it the question I'm asking, and this is the forum for it. We're a community of developers or people who are looking to develop.
Correct.
Is it then the right time to be going into development? And maybe we're a bit biased because we're developers, but I mean there's also time, as much as you can, timing yourself but not just about timing yourself, positioning your product according to where the market is, and who you think who your buyer is. And I'm more inclined to go towards, well, generally in Sydney and New South Wales, it's we've lost a lot of our investors. The investor base isn't quite as strong as it used to be.
what it used to be. Yeah, correct.
Obviously, you know, tightening policies around overseas lending and things like that. We've got a lot of overseas sort of investors that have retracted. So it is very much now an owner-occupier space. So are we as developers then catering to that market and the type of product that we're developing? So are we finding ourselves, you know, is it a downsizer market? Is it a downsizer market? In which case, are they generally, you know, worried about interest rates as well? Because, you know, are they selling large houses, you know, and downsizing to where they're paying, you know, predominantly cash or whichever? So my question to you, Tony, would be, what are your thoughts in terms of how the interest rates are going to, you know, are going to follow on to development, and whether it is sort of a ripe period for developers to really be thinking about, all right, let's get onto this wave before it sort of picks up, or what are your thoughts there?
Well, firstly, it's always a right period to be in development. So the fact that we are forcing equity onto properties, it's the right time. The key adage with any development, in order to be successful in property development, is you make your money when you buy. If you don't make your money when you buy, then you will forever be chasing your tail, and you will lose a lot of money. So you make your money when you buy. And so what can you do in a market that's in decline? Well, you can factor that into the offer that you put in. You get to choose the offer that you submit. So you want to wind down your potential sale prices. So you'll do your data research in Price Finder or RP data, whatever, until you choose to use, but be very conservative with those end prices. So from a feasibility point of view, it's the adage of you start with end in mind. So you start with what you can sell the product that you're creating for. What is the product you're going to create? So you touched on that. And whilst you talked about, hey, is it as downsized the market? I mean, property in Australia has got, you know, so many markets and sub-markets and sub-sub-markets. And, you know, so it really comes down to doing your research. Certain products won't work well in every suburb, but they will work well in some of those suburbs. So it's about identifying, if you want to create units, for example, where are the suburbs where units are going to work? In Brisbane, for example, they haven't worked here for a while. So maybe that's not for you, whereas in other places they do. So it's all about understanding, becoming an area expert.
Yeah, right.
Right, and working out that, hey, if, you know, is this area that I'm looking at, is it a land subdivision? Is it for townhouses, etc.? So there's a whole range of things that goes into into making that decision, but the reality is that every day is a great day to be a developer. And yes, perhaps I'm a little bit biased in saying that, but I mean, again, because you make your money when you buy, and providing you buy well, then you attempt to insulate yourself as best you can from future variances. Never 100% guarantee, of course, but when you buy well, then that certainly helps when the market shifts. And you factor these things into your feasibility. So you factor in, you know, what happens if my costs go up 10% and my price goes down 10%? Am I still going to make money? You know, and so it's not just the first cut of fees, though. It's constantly pressure testing different elements of your feasibility to go, this is the price that I'm going to be offering, and stand firm on that. Again, you make your money when you buy.
Yeah, definitely. Some great tips there. So Chris says, great stuff, Tony. Simon, great tips, Tony. Scott, how are you doing?
Well, thank you.
And it's Sarah, I hope I've said it right. Hi guys, the session always informative. Thank you very much. Poor Tony, I'm getting him to talk, even though I know the mind is willing, but the body's holding back.
Well, what will happen eventually is that my mouth will keep moving, and potentially nothing will come out, because the mouth is on the mouth is on just autopilot, right? So it's so used to opening, and maybe nothing will come out. But that's okay.
We'll put on Britney Spears, because she's used to a bit of lip syncing there. So that
a bit of Milli Vanilli,
exactly.
That's more my era.
So there are definitely some great points there, Tony. You're talking about, well, we don't really need to time the market. No need to time the market.
No, but so you need to time the market with your strategy, right? So that is not every strategy is going to work all the time in the same suburb, right? So you need to time that side of things, but there are opportunities from a development point of view. If you only have the one strategy, and we encourage people to just have one strategy, then find the place where that strategy is going to work.
Right.
So in Brisbane, for example, if you're working in the Brisbane Council, there's 190 odd suburbs. I know it's very different in Sydney and Melbourne, but find the place. So we talk about one strategy, one council, 3 suburbs, right? Particularly when you're starting off. One strategy, one council, 3 suburbs.
Sure.
Why one strategy? Because it's hard enough learning one, right? One council being you don't want to go and learn multiple sets of town plans. You just want to learn one town plan.
Correct, yeah.
Right, and then 3 suburbs being really narrow in your focus, right? But as part of your suburb selection, so let's say you go and select townhouses in the Waverley Council, which is in Sydney, is that right?
Yeah. No.
Yep.
Waverley.
And so then I've just made a Sydney Council, a Parramatta Council. So then you go and look in the various suburbs that make up that council. Do they fit the townhouse strategy that you're talking about? And is there evidence of success in those suburbs?
Yeah, definitely. Davina, how are you doing? So we've talked about strategies that picking a strategy. So that's the one thing that we constantly see with developers starting up. It's working out what strategy, because there's so many different strategies, right? And people generally, if they're learning, it will be there's learning and then trying to work out which strategy works for them. What are some ways that have worked for you, or just, you're obviously mentoring quite a few students. What are ways for them to determine what strategy suits them?
Risk, time, money. There's a number of factors, right? So risk being, yes, there's risk, but there's riskier strategies. Time being completion of the project. Do you want your project to complete in under a year? Are you happy if it goes for 2, maybe 2.5 years? Money. How much money have you got? How much money can you get access through from private lending, from other joint venture partners, whatever it is? So there's a number of key factors that you need to consider. So, for example, a splitter block, which is in Brisbane. There's a lot of them in Brisbane, although they do exist elsewhere, but not as prolific as in Brisbane. A splitter block can, because it's already on the 2 lots, so Untitled 2 lots, you can be in and out of that in 6 months, right? Now, townhouses, you can be in and out of townhouses in 18 months to 2 years, right? So you need to factor, are you going to create as land and sell as land, or are you going to then construct? So again, split a block, you've created 2 lots of land. Are you going to offload them as land, or are you going to keep going and build houses on them? So all of those types of things are going to determine what your strategy is. So it's money, it's time, it's propensity for risk or adversity to risk.
Sure.
It's competence as well. So in the ladder of complexity, on the bottom rung of the ladder in development is cosmetic renovations. Right the way through to high-rise towers, and anything in between. So you want to pick something that you're comfortable with doing as well. When I say comfortable, we haven't done it before, right? But at least the other thing you can do is speak to people who are doing the strategy that you want to do. So one of the great things that about this Facebook group is that this is a community of property developers, and there's other network meetings and so on and so forth. But you want to ask people who are having success in townhouses, what is it that they love doing? What is it that they don't love doing? What are the positive things of doing townhouses? What are the negative things of doing townhouses? What are the considerations that I need to factor in? Do the same with every single strategy. It's a land subdivision. Do the same with that. Unit dwellings. Do the same with that. Land and then building. Do the same. Just constantly ask people to start to formulate an idea. Don't just look at all the positive stuff.
Yeah.
Right, because you can get caught up in the bright lights of it all. Actually, ask the questions on what are the negative things that I need to consider. So let me give you a real life example for me, and you know about this because we talk about this privately. But for me, I'm in a very large land which has got land subdivision. It's got townhouse building. It's got whole sorts of wonderful, shutting down roads and all sorts of wonderful challenges. it is taking a very, 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 very long time. So why is that an issue? Well, it's an issue because I don't get paid until the end, right? And so you need to factor in your cash flow to sustain doing a larger development. Now, if you're starting out, then I certainly wouldn't encourage you go and do what it is that I do as your first deal. But you need to factor in all these types of things. If you choose to do a townhouse development, well, that's going to be 18 months to 24 months before you cash out. Can you sustain your lifestyle and pay your expenses during that period?
And so it comes down to the question as well, then, is what are you trying to achieve? Like, what is your goal, isn't it? To help narrow down your strategy, because if you're happy to stay in, working and earning a good income, and what you're trying to do is create extra cash flow, then maybe the length of the project isn't so much a problem.
Sure.
Whereas,
yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, I'd actually say to go. Sorry, you go, Cheryl.
No. So I'm just saying, if we're helping some of the listeners here to work out in their mind, because there's always the question of do I do an do I do a short term? Do I do a reno? Do I do a sub? Or do I do a joint venture? And I think it all comes down again to what is your why? What are your goals, and what in terms of timing, how you're trying to achieve that? Because as we know, if we want to, if the goal is to replace our income in 12 months, well, we know that there are high cash flow type strategies that can use to do that, which don't necessarily involve development per se. Whereas, and then there are others as well. Like I said, if you don't mind having, take advantage, and this is one thing, take advantage of the fact that you have good income and good serviceability.
100%. 100%. Take it from me. I had a great income, and look, I've done what I've done, and I'm out now, and I've been out since March of 2018. Yeah. But it's not easy. Yeah. It's not easy in any stretch of the imagination. So you want to stay in that job until you're at a point where you can comfortably switch over and cover those expenses. That's the key thing. Right. So I know I get the whole temptation to get out of the job as quick as you can, and certainly I fell into that trap. And I've done what I've done, but there's certainly plenty of times when it would be nice if I had some additional security of income, but I don't. So I don't sit here and dwell on it or worry about it or get upset by it. It's simply I don't have that luxury, and so I deal with what's in front of me. But for someone who's wanting to get out of their job, I get the whole temptation about leaving, but you want to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row first. I just want to also touch on something else that you started to talk about and then spoke over, which was the first thing is, and if we go way back to our very first episode that you and I did, Cheryl, months and months and months ago, the popularity of this program, it just keeps rolling on. But our very first episode was, why do you want to do this in the first place? You need to be so clear with why you want to do it, because I almost dropped my water, because I can tell you that your property development journey is going to be filled with ups and downs and ups, and you need to really challenge yourself on why you want to do it. Yes. And you need to challenge yourself on, is it worth it? Is it worthwhile doing all those things? You can be incredibly successful in property development, but it's one hell of a journey, and take it from me, it is one hell of a journey.
Yeah, it's not rainbows and unicorns every day, that's for sure.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, and so you need to be clear on why you want to do it. Now, and for me, so my why, way back when I started, was to, quote unquote, to regain happiness by spending more time with my family, because back when I was working, I spent most of my weeks in an aeroplane and a hotel suite traveling around the country. So, I was very clear on what my why was, to be able to get out of my day job. But you need to be very clear on, why you're doing this, because it is a journey, and it's a long journey, and you need to love the journey, because if you don't love the journey, then it's going to be challenging and problematic for you.
Yeah. there are quite a lot of nail-biting moments. Well, whether it's back to the wall makes you think. You have to make it work.
Yeah, correct. It's called resourcefulness. It's called resourcefulness. It's called, if Tony Robbins talks about, if you want to take the island, you've got to burn your boats. So you've got to burn the boats that took you to the island, and that way there is you're not coming off that island without success. And so you've got to do what you can to ensure victory, and that's certainly how I approach it, how I approach my business coaching business as well. But I'm just saying that for others, if I can give some advice to people, my advice is don't necessarily follow my pathway. My pathway was an accelerated journey of 1,000 square metres to 1 acre to 2 hectares. So that's a pretty accelerated journey. And I'm just suggesting to people that if you're not up for it, then do it in a more methodical fashion.
Yeah, yeah. And if you are going to be expanding so quickly, definitely have on board experienced people to work with. People who can guide you, mentor you, definitely utilize this particular forum and the community to reach out to people, ask questions, because we want to see people succeed. Development is not an area where you want to poo-poo people. It's because if you don't do well in a project, that could have a huge impact on your financial your financial position for many years.
Financial future. I agree. And one of the things that I found way back when I first started, and again, for those who don't know my story, I started my journey in 2015. When I first started, I went to my very first property meetup in Brisbane, on the north side of Brisbane, in May of 2015. And I was blown away by the supportive, collaborative nature of the people in the community. I just couldn't believe it. And I kept questioning myself. I was a little bit skeptical early on, going, there's got to be a catch here. These people are too nice. They're too friendly. They're too supportive. They're too helpful. What's going on? I was a little bit wary. Correct. What are they trying to sell me? And all these sorts of things that I was going through. And what I learned over time is that because in property development, they talk about your team, right? So you may do it on your own, but then you've got a team of consultants, professionals around you. But in a lot of cases, you're doing it on your own. And so the great thing is that these types of network meetings or forums like yours, groups like yours, is a great place for all these people to come together and to help each other, collaborate, share, support. And I have just found it the most wonderful, wonderful community. And I'm involved in a few other communities now, but I've just found, my whole journey, the people that I've met have been incredibly supportive, collaborative, and want you to do well. It's really quite special. So if you're starting out and you're saying, my goodness, all these people are so helpful, and here's this bloke and this lady on a Tuesday night and they're giving up their time and it's for free and all this sort of stuff. It's like, you know what? It's actually our version of paying it forward, because there were people back when I started that gave of their time for free for me to help me out, and the least I can do is then repay the favour to other people.
Yeah, definitely. And because, as having gone through your own journey and you realizing how difficult, not how difficult it was, but the fact that it is something that you don't necessarily want to do on your own. It's not something that you want to do on your own. And I always encourage everyone in the community, ask questions. Don't feel like it's a silly question. Don't feel, and I've seen some really, really great questions that have been popping up, that are quite specific, quite development specific. And there's so many people that offer their feedback. I think that's fantastic. It really is fantastic to be able to feel that people are there to have your back. And yet, sometimes if there's anyone here that feels a little bit nervous about putting themselves out there for fear of looking foolish or whatever, feel free to send me a private...
Do a Facebook Live and you'll work your way through that pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Or send me a private message. I've had lots of people that do that. I don't necessarily encourage everyone to do it, because it's more about getting other people's input into it as well, because my knowledge, your knowledge, my knowledge is restricted to what it is that we know, but there's some really, really experienced, knowledgeable people in the group that are able to help you
100%.
move forward, or at least point you in the right direction. Not forgetting,
100%.
this is Australia.
100%.
This is Australia wide. So I know we've done development in New South Wales and some in Victoria, but what's happening in Adelaide and in Brisbane and in Perth and all, the other regional centres, different.
Correct.
Different.
And you've done a great job, Cheryl, in creating a culture where you're encouraging people to ask those questions. And it was, it was written in the Bible, which is ask and you shall receive. And so ask the question. Give yourself half a chance, right? If you don't ask the question, then I'll give you a guarantee. You're going to get 0 responses, right? So if you ask the question, if you put yourself out there, you actually have half a chance of people coming back and helping you. So I would strongly urge people out there to ask, and you at least give yourself half a chance of having a response that could be the answer that you're looking for. Or as you said, please feel free to private message, Cheryl or myself or other people as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to, I know a few people have hopped on.
Speaking of questions,
yes.
are there any questions?
I was going to ask, are there any questions?
There you go. It's a lovely segue.
Corn, I hope the children are asleep, and I'm sure you handled that well. Lucy did ask a question, and this was a private message. So she's looking at, it's not so much a development, but a commercial property. I'm not sure if you've dealt much with commercial property, and if there's anyone here that's listening, looking at renting a larger commercial property, and not so much subdividing, but segmenting, sectioning that up into smaller parts and subleasing it out. So if there's anyone here that's listening and has some experience around that, please let me know.
A good person to speak to that I know is Mish Daniel.
Oh, okay.
Mish Daniel, Daniel.
Yes.
So if you a question around commercial, then reach out to Mish.
Okay, good.
Let her know that I sent you, and she'd be only too happy to help. So Mish Daniel.
Mish Daniel. Okay, excellent. Thank you. See, just ask, and something's going to come up.
So there you go.
Simon's asked, what are your thoughts of developing in other states? Tony, you can start.
Sure. So let me give you a story. So I spent some time with someone on Thursday last week, and actually Friday. My apologies. Friday I did a coaching session, and this particular person had done a renovation. She's in Brisbane. I've given it away, or given the gender away. She's in Brisbane. She did a renovation in Geelong, and she made $44,000 by doing it. And she never left the state, never saw the property, and she did all that from her home office.
Right.
So the question is, what are my thoughts on developing interstate? Well, it's possible. It's possible. So let's talk about how is it possible, right? So I touched on it before, that to be successful in property development, it's a team sport. So I would encourage you. Now there is a backstory to this example I gave, and that is that this person had done a prior renovation project in Geelong and already had a team established. So what you can do is, if you identify your area, is you can go into that area, and I encourage you to travel down to the area or travel up wherever you are and meet the various people that would form part of your team, the town planners, the civil engineers, the architects if you need them, so on and so forth. Understand one council, so understand the one council town plan, establish the team, a civil contractor as well, and then you can manage these things remotely. I mean, we've all got, the world is such a small place. And so, whether it be you can do things via the camera, via, not Facebook, but FaceTime, etc. So you can see things. So perhaps a consultant can show you something if you're not in that state. Hey, look at this, or what do you think here, or whatever. So there's plenty of ways that you can do it. There's so many computer programs, web-based programs that enable you to do plenty of research. There's Street View. There's near maps, there's all sorts of stuff that you can get all the analysis and all the information you require without having to leave the comfort of your home office.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still, like I said, I still recommend definitely flying down or flying up or flying to the location.
Oh, yeah,
So you
absolutely.
get a real good sense of the feel of the
Of
area.
course.
There's nothing to get a sense of who's buying and what activity and how much activity.
Speak to agents.
Yeah.
Speak to agents. Become an area expert, right? So one of the things that you need to do early on is you become an area expert. So again, I talked about 3 suburbs earlier on. So narrow down to those 3 suburbs, and then you want to be an area expert. And how do you become an area expert? Well, you can do it online. You can get a whole range of pricings and see what's selling, what people are producing. But you can't beat getting in your car, or if you're interstate, traveling around. And speaking to agents and going to open homes and seeing what's happening, and seeing why is something on this side of the street selling for 10 or 20 grand less than on this side of the street, or 3 streets over, or what's that there? Oh, it's near an electrical substation, or it's near a school, or whatever it might be. You don't get the true sense of it until you're on the ground. But once you go down and on the ground once, then there's nothing stopping you from doing this stuff remotely. And I know plenty of people who are down your neck of the woods in Sydney who are developing up in Brisbane. So it's possible. It can be done. It does require some trips up, but you don't need to be sitting there hovering over your development site. For example, my site's an hour north of where I live. I don't go there. I probably go there once every 3 weeks. So, I don't need to be there every single day, because, and to be honest, quite frankly, I would be a hindrance at the moment, because the civil contractors are doing all sorts of stuff with big machinery and whatnot. So what value can I add? I mean, these hands have never worked outside pretty much in their life. So, so there's zero value that I can add, right? So, so yes, you can definitely do it when you're based interstate.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the technology that we have. I mean, I've had many a Zoom call with consultants interstate.
Yeah, 100%.
You can you send someone there with a video, WhatsApp. Don't be afraid. But I do highly recommend it. Like as what Tony said as well. You do want to see the site to get a real sense, or be in the area to get a real sense, because as you say as well, there's some areas that for some reason aren't as desirable as others. So you want to make sure that you're targeting the right area and the right market that you're selling it to, and what their needs are.
Correct. And let's start with the end in mind, right? So let's start with the end in mind. So what is it that you're going to be creating? What is it that the market is going to want to buy? Is it 3 beds, 2 baths, 1 car? Is it 3 beds, 1 bath, 2 cars? Just what is it? 4 beds? Is it what is it that the market wants? But again, that's about being an area expert. So any other questions there, Cheryl?
Any other questions?
Sorry, I'm just
that's all right.
Giving my voice a break.
Davina, no, we've got Simon. That was it. There was another question. There was another question earlier today about land tax.
Around land tax.
Land tax.
And land tax in South Australia.
Correct. So I'm not familiar with what's happening in South Australia, to be honest. I'm not sure if you do.
No, so I was born in Adelaide, but that's about it. I did live in the southeast of South Australia a long, long time ago.
Yes.
No, look, I did have a quick Google up. It looks like the government's looking at the local state government down there is looking at changing some of the laws around land tax, making it harder for people to avoid paying land tax. Look, one of the things that I would say about tax is it's one of those things. It's a necessary evil, and that is that it's difficult to avoid. Obviously, clever accountants, etc. That's what you have them for, to help minimise the tax that you're paying. But also, it's a cost of doing business, and it's also something that's out of your control, right? And so this is the thing for me. I've got myself into a place where I very quickly rationalise: can I control that? Can I influence that? Or what can I do about that? And if I can't do anything about it, then I waste very little time on it. Because I need to focus my time and effort on the things that I can actually impact and make a difference on. But in regards to land tax, I think every state has got a slightly different ruling for land tax. I think here in Queensland, if it's owned on your own name, you have a tax exemption of $700,000 of the unimproved capital value. If it's in a trust or a company, then it's $350,000. If that's not right, please someone correct me. Asterisk, I'm no accountant. And so we already have those types of things here, where a number of people were starting to purchase things via a company, a trust, and so the government reduced the exemption down to about $350,000. But again, it's a cost of doing business. So if you're about to go in, if you're in South Australia and you're about to go into a development, then I would just encourage you to factor that into your feasibility. It's going to be an expense. It's going to come up, and you just need to factor that in. Let that then alter the offer that you're going to put in. So that doesn't mean that you need to make less profit. It simply means that you need to reduce your offer.
Yeah, and
so, but a lot.
Sorry.
But they're all that stuff is out of our control, yes. And I don't worry about those sorts of things. I mean, I have an accountant who worries about that stuff for me. I don't worry about those sorts of things. I worry about what it is that I can control.
I agree, and that's a critical point as well. That I find quite a few sort of developers who are starting up often forget to put in land tax and their rates and the holding cost into their feasibility.
And GST. Yeah. Some people forget to put GST in. GST is a huge cost, and if you haven't got it in, selling things using the margin scheme, then your cost is even greater. So you need to factor in GST as well.
Yeah. So and also look at it when you're negotiating as to whether that's a point there that because if you find a landowner that has to be paying land tax and you're negotiating something there, and if it's a fairly large, fairly valuable block that they have, there might be a fair chance they're paying quite a bit of land tax as well. So talk to them also. If you're purchasing it close to the start of the year, you might want to discuss, I'll pro rata pay some of your land tax, to be able to hold it for longer or whatever it might be, have a longer settlement period. Simon talks about open space contributions in Melbourne, and that's another thing, contributions. So, all across Australia, different contribution rates and different councils.
Different councils, correct.
Yeah, and we're dealing with, we've dealt with a few that about 60,000 in contributions, which is a fair chunk. It's a third of the whole price of the lot. So be aware of how contributions are calculated. Be aware of the local council's contributions and the state contributions as well, particularly if you're looking at new areas, new greenfield areas. There might be state contributions, infrastructure upgrades, things like that, that you need.
And this is exactly the reason that we say one council, right? One council, right? You really want to, when you're starting out, focus on only one council, because there's all these little hidden traps in each and every council, and you don't want to get caught out, because if something applies to another council, it may not apply over here, or vice versa. If it hasn't applied over there, it could apply over there. So you just want to really narrow your focus down and become an area expert in one council only.
Yeah, right. And whether that's over, interstate or whichever.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just still one council.
Yeah, because there's more than enough for you to study and research in that council and understanding the development controls.
That's it. But it's also, but this is also why people don't succeed. I mean, there's quite a number of reasons why people don't succeed, Cheryl. But one of them is they fail to take action. They fail to take action because they spread themselves too thin, and it becomes all too overwhelming. Right, and so the narrower that you're focused, the more that you can get traction. This is an active-based sport. It requires activity. It requires activity. It requires action. So if you can narrow down your focus and have lots of activity in a very narrow area, then you're going to get some traction. And when you get some traction, you're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to want to have more traction. You're going to feel better about yourself, and you're going to keep moving forward, right? But if you've gone across, what's the saying? It's a jack of all trades, master of none. If you have spread yourself so thin, you're not going to get any traction, and you're going to throw your hands in the air and say this developing is a whole load of crap. It's a waste of time. I can't get any traction. And I see it. And what happens is people have a bout of FOMO. So fear of missing out. For those people who don't know what I'm talking about, and they think to themselves, I can't possibly narrow down to 3 suburbs, because what about that opportunity over there? Or what about that opportunity over there? Or this opportunity over here? Or there's an opportunity over here? And they go to a meetup, or they follow some different posts, and some will say, hey, we're having some success in a particular suburb. Oh, that must be the suburb that we've got to be a part of. Or, hey, we're having some success in this suburb. Oh, that must be the suburb. And they're chopping and changing and jumping, and you know, this is a narrow down your focus. Go through a process to analyze the data, right? And again, go back to the one of the original things we talked about around you know, with markets moving and all that sort of stuff. You know, what do you do as a developer? You want to analyze the data, and you want to take the emotion out and let the data determine what you do. Narrow your suburbs down by using data, not by using emotion, by actually being able to quantify that these suburbs will work because of the analysis that I've gone and put in, not because you like the look of the suburb, you know, because someone else is doing something in the suburb. I'm not saying that it can't work. What I'm saying is do your own research before you start moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Any more questions? I can't see what actually the time is, Tony. Can you see? Oh,
I can. It's 10 to 8, 10 to 9 where you are. 10 to 8
right.
where I am.
Sorry, it's daylight savings. That's right. It's mucked a few people around.
It's early. It's early where we are.
Early.
Yeah. So there's no other questions for us.
No. People are either in dinner mode, because it is dinner time in a few of the other states. So I think we need to get a little bit of getting used to the time moving as well. I'm still getting used to that.
Yeah, I've been caught out with a few clients already this week. So I had a coaching session. I don't know if she's still watching, but anyway, we had a miss time yesterday morning, so we sorted it all out.
Oh, good.
But yes, a few of my interstate clients we've got to factor in at this time of the year. But look, I wish we had it, to be honest. I wish we had daylight saving. I used to live in New South Wales a long time ago, and you know, I wish we had it, but we don't. So again, it's out of my control, so there's no point whinging about it.
Yeah, that's right. I have to say, I feel a bit sorry. I've got a virtual assistants that are in the Philippines, and the poor guy's got to wake up at 6:30 to get on a call with me at 9:30. But they're worstings. I'm up at 5, so I'm up at 5.
I was going to say. But does he want the job or not?
Exactly.
You know, so you know, I mean, I had to get up at 4 o'clock. I don't anymore, although I did on Saturday. But you know, I used to get up at 4 o'clock every single day. You know, for at least 18 months. Yeah. So it's you've got to do these things, right? And again, you know, that's in regards to being successful in property developing. It really is quite simple for me, in the sense of, in order to have a different outcome, you need to do things differently. Right? And if you're in your job and you want to leave your job, and I get that, but you still want to keep doing the same things, going partying with the same people, watching the amount of Netflix that you do, you know, just relaxing as often as you do currently, and you expect to leave your job through property development, I've got some sad and sorry news for you, and that is it's not going to happen. So you need to do things differently, right? And you need to really challenge yourself on that, and challenge yourself on, if you're going to do things different, you've got to find extra time. And that could be wake up early. That's what I did. You mightn't be a morning person, so that's fine. You might stay up late. You might watch less television. You might not go out and party as much with your friends, right? But these are the things that you've got to do if you want to shift your circumstances and have a different outcome.
Absolutely.
But Gary Vee, the great Gary Vee, talks about if you want a 1% life, you need to act like the 1% act.
Yeah.
Right? So 1% life being the upper echelons of society, if that's the life that you want, you can't go and live like the masses do and have that as your outcome. You've got to do things very differently. And property development success is no different to any other business. And hence that's why we called it the business of property.
Exactly. Absolutely. And each and every day, we talk about this at every one of our sessions, don't we, Tony? It's about going back to your why and every day improving yourself, that personal development piece along with your actual knowledge about development. They go hand in hand. They go hand in hand because we've spoken to many developers who are like, I have all this knowledge, I've been to all these courses, but I haven't done any development.
No, and so here's the thing with that, right? So when I grew up, there was a saying which was knowledge is power. Now that I'm a lot older, a lot wiser, knowledge is not power, right? And knowledge is potential power, but it's not power, because if you know something and you're not doing something with it, right? So the old Chinese proverb is, to know and not to do is to not know at all. So if you know something and you've gone to courses and you've read the books and you've watched the YouTube clips and you've been to the meetups and you're doing all this sort of stuff and you're failing to put your left foot in front of your right, well, then you may not as well know at all. And so that's the thing with property development, and perhaps, because we're at the end, I won't get onto a rant now, but maybe next week I'll get onto another rant, and happy to talk about whatever people want us to talk about. But it might be around how do we actually put the left foot in front of the right, because the reality is fear is the number one reason that's going to hold people back. Now, fear of a whole range of things. Right? There's all sorts of different fears. Fear of criticism from other people, fear of failing, fear of success. Right? There's all sorts of fear. But what I'm saying is that fear is going to be the reason that holds you back. And that's why I focus heavily on the mindset. And that's why I focus heavily on, crashing through limiting beliefs, because it wasn't until I got out of my own way that I started to have some success. And it applies to all of us. Right? We all need to work on those things. So you can know all the stuff you want, but it's until the rubber hits the road, until you start to take action, it's when you start to put that knowledge into practice that you get better at it, and then you give yourself a chance of being successful in property development.
Yeah, definitely. So, Tony, to round things up for the evening, top 3 things that you want people to take away with them today.
Gosh, we've talked about so many.
We've never talked about
so many. So the first one is well I have. The first one is, you touched on it, your why. Know your why. Know your why. So why do you want to do this in the first place? Because your journey will be up and down. If you want to learn more about know your why, go all the way back to the very first episode that Cheryl and I did on the business of property, and you will see that we talk about it for about an hour. So that's the first thing. In regards to, we talked about interest rates and the impact that it's having on the market. And from a developing point of view, what I'm suggesting is that you make your money when you buy. So you can actually buy into any market because we're forcing equity of value into the property. So, if you're a buy and hold investor, then yes, you want to be timing markets. But from a development point of view, then it's not as essential. And the third thing, look, it's a tough one, but let's just say take action, right? So whatever you want to do in property development, take some action. Now that action might be that you do want to do some research, and I'm not saying not to acquire knowledge or improve your knowledge, right? So that last little rant that I had, I want you to acquire knowledge and improve knowledge, but at some point you have to transfer that knowledge into doing something. Right? At some point you have to go across the precipice into actually doing something. And I can tell you, the very first property that I bought back in March of 2016, I was shit scared. I was so scared. And have I done the right thing? And all the stories that I told myself, right? And I'm not suggesting that it's any easier. I'm not suggesting that I don't still have some of the thoughts, but it gets easier, right? The more that you do something, it gets easier. It's not easy. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. It's not easy, but it gets easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 things.
What are your 3, Cheryl?
What are my 3? That there's never a perfect time for development. you find the opportunities in every sort of market. Two is coming up with strategies that fit you, and it comes down to that why and what your ultimate goal is, and finding a strategy that complements, you know, all those factors that we're talking about: income and time and experience. And the third one, utilize the space. Welcome the community that you have around you to be able to help you move forward in your development journey. Even if you're a seasoned developer, and that's even better. If you've got all this experience and all this knowledge, I encourage you to share it around with the rest of the community here. So, you know.
That's it. I love it.
That's it.
I love it. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you. Do we have any more last comments or questions, Cheryl?
Brooke Simon says, love listening to like-minded people. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Simon, for tuning in. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
For
I've made
putting
it. I've made it.
You've done very, very well. I did tell you, it's not unusual for people who attend Tony Robbins' event to come down with the cold and the flu and things. Is it a detoxing type thing?
Yeah. Look, because when you brought that up, I was reflecting on that comment, and it makes sense to me because, firstly, you're in a confined space with 7,500 of your closest friends, right? So the chances are, and for 4 days as well, and they're not just business hour days; they are early starts, late finishes, right? So the chances of coming in contact with some infectious disease is quite high. The next is not only are the days long, but you are so if you do what I did, and that is you play all out, you give your all, right? And so I lost my voice. I do another Facebook Live on a Sunday morning, and on the Sunday morning that I was in Tony Robbins, I could barely speak because I just played all out. And so you're putting your body under enormous amounts of stress. You're jumping in the aisles, and, carrying on. Plus you're around 7,500 other people. Plus you're tired as well. And you're screaming and shouting. So look, it makes a lot of sense. Look, it did knock me out at the start of last week, but I sort of, as the week got on, I started to slowly progress, and obviously went to Melbourne on Saturday. So look, I to be honest, I feel good. I probably don't sound that great, but I do feel pretty good. About 85%. So not far off. Good enough for me to keep forging forward.
We're back 100% next week.
You better believe it.
Excellent.
Look out.
Awesome. Thank you. And there he goes, coughing his lungs out. Thanks, Tony.
That's it. I'm going to lose a lung. Thank you. See you guys. Thank you so much.
I'll see you all later. Thanks for tuning in.
Talk
Bye-bye.
soon. See you. Bye.